Well, thank you so much for the introduction and for the invitation to come here and have this presentation. We're very excited about being here, and it's a project that we've been working on, or a paper that we've been working on, but it's still very preliminary. So any input is very welcome and very much appreciated. Yeah, and so Christian is not here today, but as you mentioned, it's Anders, Astrid, and I who've been working on this paper. Yes, so we'll just go ahead. So the paper is based on a project that we've been carrying out. And the purpose of the project is to explore the ethics of using surveillance technology in dementia care. So it's a close collaboration between the Aarhus University, the municipality of Aarhus, the Business Academy of Aarhus, and Vive, where I'm from, which is the Danish Center for Social Science Research. And the project's been running since 2019. And it's been taking place at this nursing home that you can see here. It's a rather large nursing home with 85 apartments, so it's very big, and it's distributed in 5 different houses where we've been carrying out fieldwork. And there's a lot of different professions employed at the nursing home. So we have nurses and social and healthcare assistant and helpers, and also physiotherapists at the nursing home. The nursing home is placed in a suburban area, so we have a lot of different housing nearby, but we also have highly trafficked roads and lakes and buses stopping by. So it's a nursing home where there's a lot of activity. Yeah. And at this nursing home, they've been using different kinds of surveillance technology to enhance the safety of the residents living there. At one point, we did sort of a count of how many people at the nursing home who had a different kind of cognitive disabilities, like dementia, and it was around 2/3 of the people living there. So these people living at the nursing home have particular and enhanced needs of being taken care of. So the surveillance technologies that we've been focusing on and which they've been using at the nursing home are these passive infrared sensors. So they have movement sensors placed, for instance, at the bedside, so to give an alarm to the staff if a resident leaves the bed during nighttime, if the resident is, for instance, at risk of falling, but not being able to recognize or that they have this issue. And then when the alarm goes off, the staff will be able to respond quickly, or at least that's the purpose, and come and aid the resident to, for instance, the restroom during night. They also use door alarms, so it's both an alarm at the apartment where the individual resident lives, or at the door leaving the ward or the department. So the intention of having these door alarms is to give notifications to staff so that they will be able to accompany the resident when leaving the area. And the door alarms are assigned only to people, of course, who are in need of assistance when leaving the area. So it's not for everybody, but for specific residents who have this issue that they need to be accompanied when leaving the area. Furthermore, they also use GPS tracking at the nursing home for residents who are known to leave or be very active in leaving the nursing home. And so they've put GPS trackers on. You can see either the watch, the pink watch for ladies, if they like pink, or the black boxes that you can wear around your neck or in your pocket. And that would give a warning to the caregivers during, if the resident leaves the building, and then they can use the tablet to see the location of the resident and bring back the resident or accompany them on their walk. But obviously they also use more analog surveillance technologies such as behavioral charts or whiteboards, and also, of course, looking out the window or down the hall to see the whereabouts of the resident. And so they use these safety enhancing welfare technologies to prevent falls or getting lost, and also to improve sleep. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've been doing ethnographic fieldwork at the nursing home in 2021 and 2022. And here Stine and I have kind of been very curious about what it means for people living with these technologies and working with these technologies when more and more of them kind of come into their everyday life. And to explore this, we've been spending a lot of time with care workers and with residents. That's been through taking part in everyday activities like meals and watching TV and organized walks and meetings. However, for the purpose of today's presentation, we'll focus mainly on the care workers and how they deal with these technologies. So the technologies are meant to make it possible to monitor the movements of residents without being in the same physical space as them. So they'll make it easier to know when to intervene and potentially even intervene before something happens. And many of the care workers, they did talk about how they definitely could see the point in having these technologies. However, it also became very, very clear while watching them work with them and kind of following them that it required a lot of work to make these technologies helpful. So they're kind of easy to present them as these standardized packages you can just kind of plug in and suddenly you'll be able to see where everybody is. But what we saw was really this kind of a lot of effort and continuous effort was required. And we've kind of divided this type of work into 3 categories that we'll present today. So the first is maintenance. So the technologies all needed this ongoing attending to in order to work. This was especially obvious with GPS trackers, where at a municipal level they've prioritized having a really accurate GPS tracker over a long-lasting battery. So that means they need to be charged at least once every single day to be completely reliant. So this means that a lot of the residents will have 2 GPS trackers, so one for daytime and one for nighttime, so they can charge all of them once a day. And that also means you need to charge this device and change it once a day. And it sounds simple, and most of the time it was pretty simple, but it also did require a lot of coordination and across three different shifts. Similarly, the door alarms and the movement sensors need to be turned on manually so whether they need to be on during the daytime or during the nighttime. And this also meant that you needed to kind of coordinate these technologies being on. And again, most of the time it worked, but we also saw really small moments of forgetfulness and miscommunication that could lead to, for instance, a resident walking off wearing a GPS tracker but without any battery on. It took about 8 hours to find him. So these like kind of small, glimpses can kind of glitches can kind of lead to completely losing track of a person, and potentially even lead to pretty dangerous false safety because you would expect them to work and then they don't work. The second type of work we've seen is what we call repair work. And this was particularly obvious when I followed a night shift where the care worker I shadowed, he went into every single resident who had a movement sensor, and then he would kind of sneak into the room really silently. He would trigger the sensor, And then he would sneak out with his tablet before the alarm sounded on his tablet, not to wake up the resident, just to check that he would actually trust every single sensor worked in the way that he expected them to work. So it's kind of this like going in and just making sure, is everything working as expected? And if not, I'm going to repair it. And then if it is, then I can trust it. But like he told me that he just didn't trust it if he didn't check every single one of them. Because he had this like, long night shift where it was just him and one other person for all these residents. And he really needed to know, there can't be any false safety here. Like I need to check it. And I guess this also kind of shows how there are a lot of very particular expectations to these technologies, but they really do require a lot of adjustment to work according to these expectations. And the third type of work we've kind of conceptualized is what we draw on the concept of tinkering to kind of pinpoint. And this is kind of a term that's going to kind of capture this attentive experimentation that often is necessary in care work. So you need to try out different things to see what works. And this both applies to trying out new technologies. So if a resident needs a GPS, so they think a GPS could be helpful, they will kind of try out different versions. Should it be the little device you have in your pocket? Should it be a watch? How do you do this? You kind of need to try out different things. You can't just like start with one technology. Similarly, we also saw a lot of creative solutions with these technologies, such as placing a movement sensor in front of a door, because that type of alarm was slightly better than the normal door alarm, because it would kind of only lead to an alarm at the point where it made sense. So all in all, this shows that the care workers agency really is an essential aspect of using these surveillance technologies in nursing home-based dementia care. They're not just technologies that are kind of, these standard packages you plug in, but rather they depend on being integrated into this much larger care arrangement. And they need to be cared for, so you both need to care for the residents, but also for the technologies in order to provide useful information. And due to the experimental nature of working with many of these technologies, we saw that they were managed fairly ad hoc, or like kind of in very informal ways. And this meant that it was possible to kind of find these good, perhaps slightly untraditional solutions, but it also meant that, there were these kind of, a lot of things dependent on it, there being the right person, or it being kind of the person who knew exactly how to react to this alarm. And it allowed for, alarms to have different meanings depending on which resident it was, but it also meant that if a care worker was sick and somebody else came in, or if somebody came late, a lot of the system could kind of just fall into pieces.
So this ad hoc tinkering and management and repair work really came under pressure when a new legal framework was introduced. It was a framework called Safety Promoting Welfare Technology that allowed for a more flexible and unbureaucratic use of these technologies. So previously, if the nursing home needed to use one of these technologies, they would have to apply for a use of force at the municipality. It was considered use of force to use these technologies. So if a resident was at risk of leaving the nursing home with the risk of getting hurt, then they would previously apply for the municipality. With this change in the legislation, however, staff can, as part of care, utilize these safety-promoting welfare technologies to ensure this person's safety, dignity, and care unless the person resists this use. So this means that the assessment of when this technology is appropriate is moved from the municipality to the nursing home itself, to the care workers, to the management, and they have the authority to decide that we should use this. And this led to an increase in the use of these technologies, which was nice, apparently, because it allowed them to make the judgment. However, this really increased use of the technologies also led to an increase in the alarms going off all the time. So with 85 residents, some who had a lot of technology, some who had little, but it gave a lot of alarms all of a sudden. And that would be disturbing for the caregiver giving personal care, for instance, taking a resident in the bath, and then suddenly all this alarm would go off because the neighbor, for instance, the door alarm was being triggered, for instance. And what do you do when you have this alarm going off all the time? Well, you leave the tablet in the hallway so you won't get disturbed. And as such, it was it led to a breakdown in how far they could get with all this tinkering and management and stuff. And it led to this alarm fatigue. And alarms were being ignored, and there were redundant alarms, and we had this incident where a citizen went missing several times. So this ad hoc care arrangement that they had previously was just inadequate, and sort of led to a breakdown in the ethical commitment that the caregivers had in taking care of the residents who suddenly were at risk of being harmed. So we focused in our project on strengthening the organizational framing. So we had a series of participatory design workshops with the nursing home, with the caregivers and management, and also with people from the municipality, with the juridical department and with the technical staff who were administering all these technologies. And we draw on the notion of infrastructure as a social material ecology. So we perceive infrastructure as Stine Ballegaard phrased it, that infrastructure is a relational concept. It becomes infrastructure in relation to organized practices. So we really strived to strengthen these organizational practices and the structure, so that it would become something that they it would be something that they learned as part of this membership of working with the technology and part of the daily routines. So we really we had this series of workshops where we explored both what values are at stake and how to organize the use of the surveillance technologies, focusing on the responsibility and the knowledge sharing, and also who would be the key figures in helping to distribute this knowledge. There was a lot of tacit knowledge involved in using this technology. I don't think I'll go much more into it, but so we can present the next slide.
Yeah. So I guess what we've been trying to do with these workshops is also figuring out how can you bridge this fairly informal way of attending to people that can be really good, because you can really kind of attend to what's right in front of you, with something that kind of these technologies seem to demand slightly more organization and slightly more structure in order to work. So can you combine both? So based on work from the workshops and from what we've seen work at the nursing home while we've been there and while there's been a lot of focus on these technologies, we came up with 5 factors for what we call organizational framing around the technologies. And these are meant to allow for the right kind of attention on the technologies. So a type of attention that will allow for both flexibility in terms of trying things out, but also for sharing knowledge and making responsibilities clear. And the first one is management focus and professional discussion. So this means that the management needs to think about these technologies and be able to discuss what the best thing to do is in the given situation, so that the management kind of recognizes that this attention is really important for the technologies to work. The second one is appoint key figures. So somebody needs to be the key person or the person who knows the system and who keep other people in the loop when new things happen. So the key figure is kind of somebody who is responsible for the system at large. And that's kind of opposed to what we've called clear allocation of responsibility. So that relates more to who is responsible for a particular alarm that day, who is responsible for turning something on and turning something off. Then we have number 4, which we've called tidy up, which might seem a bit cheeky, but really it's about kind of like addressing the number of alarms critically. So making sure that there aren't more alarms than you need, and kind of having this like knowledge of alarm fatigue being something that really can happen if you have too many alarms quite clear in your head. And the last one is systematic follow-up. So we conceptualize dementia and good care in dementia care as something that's really aware of how dementia is a disease that changes rapidly. And I guess to a certain extent, all care needs to be something that kind of attunes to the situation. So you can't just have a standardized solution, but you need something that is fitting to the situation. So there can't really be one stable solution, but you need to kind of adjust it continuously. And we've then collected all these factors in this model that is in Danish, but we couldn't translate it before this. So, but I'll just tell you that it's in this wheel, and we've kind of connected them with puzzle pieces to symbolize that it's constantly on the move, but also that they depend on each other for stability. And we've put the management in the middle because we kind of see them as holding the other pieces together.
And furthermore, we've developed discussions to support this ethical reflection and discussion at the nursing home. I won't go into them, so you can just put them on. But it has to be sort of a systematic discussion on what's right, what's the right thing to do given all these circumstances, what the resident need, what are the values and rules and principles that are relevant, and what are the opportunities or possibilities, and all in all, what is then the right thing to do.
And I think we're way over time, so maybe we should just end it here. Or do we have time for some closing remarks? Or yeah, okay. So we've been at this nursing home for a while. We've helped put the focus on the technologies and how they're used. And based on our observations and on follow-up interviews we did, it seems like it has made it easier to work with these technologies. Like this physiotherapist said, it seems to be easier to allocate clear responsibilities. So she said the GPS trackers are on the schedule for the morning meetings. Who is responsible for each of the residents? Who is responsible for the GPS trackers? It's part of the routine for everyone in charge of the meetings. So it does seem like there's kind of this point that you go through every single day. Similarly, they've also made a much more durable system of a group of employees who are responsible for the wider system and who will meet every day at lunch and kind of go through it. However, what we want to underline is also that this is a type of constant work. So making these technologies work in safe ways is not something you can kind of just look at this model once and then do. You need to engage with it, on a daily basis. And that reflection is also something you need to return to over and over again, because obviously the situation changes, so you need to attend to it. And what we aim to do is create this framework that makes it possible to attend to the technologies in a way that doesn't take them for granted and doesn't ignore them. So kind of is able to tune into the situation and consider what makes sense here. Now our project is this collaboration with the nursing home. So they applied for the funding with the project and have been part of it from the beginning. And that means that the perspective of the care workers and their agency is very much in focus right now. And we're kind of trying to think a bit more widely now about how does this agency combine with other types of agency. So the agency of the residents is particularly poignant here. And we really want to think more about how making an organizational framing that really helps at keeping the technology running might intertwine and clash with the agency of the residents. So kind of, if you keep the system going in a really neat way, how does that affect the system at large, or like kind of other people? There are also other types of agency, such as public attention. Recently, there was a lot of focus on the battery life of the GPS trackers, which definitely meant that, especially at the municipal level, there was a lot of focus on that, and there was kind of a whole case that became something that, got more attention at almost every single level. And lastly, the political resource allocation also plays a really huge role in a welfare state like Denmark. It's kind of very much determined what kind of technology you can use from at a political level, and we really look forward to thinking more about how recognizing the agency of care workers in making GPS tracking and other surveillance technologies work in safe and ethical ways intertwine with that level. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.